All right, good evening, folks. We're on another edition episode of On That Ish with my co host, Issue X, and we have our guest, Raul Padron. So, welcome back.
What
Thank
up,
you.
everybody?
What up? So, yeah, we're talking about the show Warrior, uh, based on the writings of Bruce Lee. And, I was talking about the 18th century San Francisco Chinatown backdrop of the show and Chinese folks trying to make it. Some of them, just working class people with their shops set up, and then
Well, I think the show is really about Chinese people and Irish people trying to make it.
yeah, I was getting there. Yeah. Um, and it's got the gangs, gangs that folks are in, uh, a few of the few main gangs, and it's got brothels that are set up. It's kind of like the West.
It is.
Um,
It is in an old West San Francisco setting, set in
yeah,
San Francisco in the late 1800s.
yeah, hmm and yeah, there's conflict between Irish folks and Chinese folks, and then just white folks in general, and a corrupt government and police force,
In
and
the Old
Yeah.
West, that was very common.
yeah,
So you
Corruption
have
in the
you have
government.
you
yeah,
have you have Chinese immigrants who are the most recent immigrants. You have Irish immigrants, and you have a white established. I don't want to say aristocracy. Certainly, there's a class system going on there.
mhm,
Um, of non-Irish whites, or at least Irish whites that have been there for some time and don't. So you got these two groups of people that live in really low standard, substandard situations. Everybody's competing for the same types of employment, the same jobs, the same opportunities, and can't everybody have them?
Hey, it's probably a reflection on today's society as well, with the way they try and pit my people versus your people, guys.
Right, right. That's a good comparison. Not just that, like with poor white people too, right? At
Poor
least
white
from an
people are the worst to
economic
suffer,
perspective.
in my opinion, because they're giving into the wrong value system in order to raise themselves up.
Which is exactly what you find portrayed in Warrior.
Excellent.
yeah. And they kind of show you, yeah, they kind of show you those parallels. Some of the characters, kind of outright say it to other characters, like, "We just want what you want," and of course, it's not that easy to try to get that across. But one of the main Chinese characters is trying to get across to one of the Irish characters, we came here for the same reason that you did. And the guy, of course, just doesn't understand it, and he just wants to fight. So you're a big fan of the show, right, Ish?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my take is that I think everybody understands it. I think it's one of those situations where there's just not enough food to go around, so to speak.
hmm
So it's like I'm out for my family.
Right. Yeah. What
It's I
did you
think it's
think? What
Go
did
on.
you think about the relationship between young June and his father?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, his father seemed he seemed to kind of give up his power quite easily at the end there.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with Chinese. I don't want to say culture, but some of the mythos that go into like Chinese hierarchies and I think he kind of knew like
There was time.
yeah, it's time. Like I
Yeah.
can't. There's you know what I mean. Like this is something that I can't really fight against, and it's kind of time. And maybe I even overstate overstayed my time.
I personally think it was bullshit. I like the show a lot, but that did not feel true to me. Just
I mean,
based
but
on
you see it evidenced in Chinese culture quite a bit. But anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
in what way?
In like Chinese mythos and you know even Japanese mythos, like you see that exact same thing play out where you know the successor overthrows the the leader or the ruler, and then the ruler concedes. You know, if the ruler can fight, the ruler fights, but if he's wise enough to recognize that I can't fight, they generally concede. I mean, like you just have not that story isn't new, so to speak. So for me, I wasn't surprised. Like, what could he have done?
Yeah, I feel like the portrayal of it seemed like his father was just very understanding for someone who for someone who has the amount of wisdom and power and leadership that his father had, to give that up so easily after his son overthrows him. It seemed a little bit odd to me.
Well,
But
see, I don't
it also
go on.
seemed odd how easily his own people went against him as well. I thought that was
Well,
kind of like the writing seemed a little bit thin there.
well, see, I see. For me, it was seamless only because like I'm immersed in like that's some of my that history, Chinese history in particular, and it is some of my favorite things to read. So I'm kind of immersed in that. So for me, I wasn't surprised. Like I didn't expect him to fight, but only because like we're not talking about an organization that's kind of built like, say, the mafia, right? Like this is a situation where and you find this again depicted in like certain mythos, Chinese mythos, where like once the soldiers recognize you can't lead, they're going to err on the side of wisdom, meaning this is a wise decision. So the one thing I will disagree with is I don't think he went easy. Like he wanted his son to kill him. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like that was like his son just wasn't going to do it.
well, when I say yeah, but I mean, want is one thing. I mean, these are people of action. Like saying I want something isn't not going easy. Like
Well, that's
if
the
I
expectation.
if I just walk up to you and say I want something, and then I just concede, you're gonna be like, well, that was easy.
Well, the expectation is you overthrew me and now you have to kill me. His son just went against that. He's like, yeah, no, we're not. No, we're not killing you. We're gonna keep you around
Right, but
because you have wisdom and experience.
even in the overthrow, there's like no, like the guy doesn't lift up a finger and like try to
Well,
fight.
how is he gonna fight though? He's past his prime. He has no soldiers. Like, how does he? How's he gonna fight? Like,
It
what?
it
What?
just it just didn't seem like he fought for it at all. I mean, he wasn't like I don't know, like he didn't try to convince anyone. Like you've, I mean, there's like no argument. There's no like passionate like
There's no groveling from a Chinese man of honor.
in arguments, not groveling. I mean, have you been in arguments ish?
No,
Are
I didn't say an
they
argument, but like what I mean is like, and I guess this is just a matter of interpretation. For me, like there was a clear line drawn, and he was on the other side of it.
Well, that's what I mean. It seemed very neat to me. But if you feel that that is the culture and that's like
I don't know
that's
that
in line
I don't
with.
want to speak for the culture, but that's just how I kind of picked up.
I mean, when I look at situations like this, I kind of try to draw parallels to like things that I know,
Mhm,
right? Like I know what it is to clash with a father,
mhm,
or I know what it is to clash with another man, what it is to clash with another leader,
mhm,
certainly someone that's above you. I know what it is to try to convince a bunch of people that the person that they've been following for, you know, for a long time, in this case, decades, is like wrong. And the interesting thing is, like, it's not like they show him planting seeds to these other soldiers. It's just like they know this deep in their soul. And so the first moment that this guy claims that he wasn't even planning to do this, that this was kind of just like a in the moment thing, he goes against everything that these folks know, and they just scratch their head and they say, you know what, you're right. We've been looking at this all wrong. We're gonna like we're gonna take up our weapons and go against this person that we've pledged honor and fealty to. It just to me, based on what I know about life and conflict, it didn't seem correct to me.
I
But
think for
that's just
me,
my opinion.
I think for me, because it's hard to compare, because I see your point. I think it's hard to compare, to make a fair comparison when we're talking about, so innately Asian cultures just operate different than we do, even on a sense of, even when it comes down to like ration and reason and logic, that in many cases supersedes emotion, right? Like in many cases, meaning, a military man is going to put his duty over his family. Historically, you understand what I'm saying? They put things like honor over love, over remote. That doesn't mean they don't feel these things. They're not capable, but in most cases, they put these things, these values over emotion. So what I saw in that scene was, I saw people recognizing the shift in power. And it was like, okay, this is this moment. We recognize it. Like, it clearly, the 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 power has fallen now to the son. He's not going to be the successor tomorrow. He's the successor today. And obviously they could have went against it, but not June, but the main character had shown, he had shown the soldiers, like, listen, this is what we did, and this is how we're going to profit. And if we hadn't have done it, you wouldn't. And they saw that, like, at the time, and I'm sure everyone could pick up on that because they were soldiers for this guy for however long they were soldiers. Like, they could pick up that, he was a little bit indecisive, and at the very least old school in his methods. And like, there's a new generation. Like, the person that you're dealing with she's new school. She's got new school methods. Our enemies are using new school methods, and you're still using this old school
So, Ish,
honor
as a
type
soldier,
system.
as a soldier yourself, you're gonna take that type of agency to make that type of
Yeah,
decision
but that's
on the
not a
fly.
cultural. That's not something that I'm culturally familiar with. It's not something that my culture practices as Americans. Like, we don't
Hmm.
we don't have that type of cultural practice where, let's say for instance Japan, where, a dishonorable act, you will kill yourself. You'll commit seppuku.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I'm
we don't
familiar.
have cultures like.
I'm
Now
familiar with that.
these are Chinese people. I'm just using another Asian culture as a parallel because they are pretty much not. They're absolutely not the same cultures, but they have some of the same principles when it comes to things like honor and leadership and hierarchy, and they have a lot of the same principles. Whereas, no, you're absolutely right. I'm not going to take the same type of agency, but on the same token, that's not something
So
that
you,
has been drilled into me
so
culturally since, you know what I
so
mean?
you're saying because this is a Chinese culture that soldiers can take agency and they can decide to be disloyal to
It
their
has
leader for
happened
decades.
historically.
Okay, that
It
soldiers have
absolutely has happened.
that the amongst the ranks of soldiers that they've turned on their
Well,
leaders as well.
if you look at, let's say just the Three Kingdoms era of China, right? Before China became a united country, you had feudal warlords all over China.
Hmm.
You had regencies and prefectures and literally feudal warlords all over China. And at one point, China was divided into three kingdoms before it finally was united under one banner. Now, these are periods in China called the Warring States periods, where you just had prefectures at war with each other. This little township who was, and you have historical accounts of absolutely when a better successor, when that guy who's been second to the leader the entire time. And of course, you have people that you're going to have a contingency, and you'll see this in if you read any Chinese history. You have contingencies of soldiers that go out with their leader because they're loyal to the end. And these are examples where these are cases where the greater multitude is and of course they don't just want to turn against their leader, but they're discontent or they're dissatisfied, and they've recognized that there is a better leader.
So how do you feel about this case where it was 100% of them turned?
I mean, I will argue that I feel like there should have been at least a few that were loyal and gonna stand there and die.
Okay.
I will argue that there were none is I mean is a good. It's a good observation. There were none. That's kind of weird. You know what I mean? Because I definitely would argue like, okay, well, yeah, there probably would have been a few that would have been loyal to him to the end. You know,
right.
Similar to. But I mean, look at their opposition, right? Like, you know, he was killed by his most loyal servant, and his other most loyal servant accepted it.
Who's he?
The leader of their opposition. Okay. You know what I mean? Like his most loyal servant killed him, and his other most loyal servant, when he found out, he accepted it.
What do you think, Raul? We've been talking for a while. What do you think about all this?
I see both of your points, but perhaps it would have been better if they had a few of them stay loyal to the old regime, because that's typically what happens in any culture. That you'll still have loyalists sticking around.
There's some kind of fight, right?
Yeah, there's always a small conflict at the end, even if it's a majority is staying going with the new blood.
Right. Yeah, you definitely made a good case, Flav. I do see that, and I agree.
Yeah, no, that was a good discussion, because you definitely stood up for some things that I certainly wouldn't have known. Okay, so what do you think? I mean,
so hold on before you go on. I just want to say, Raul. So this show is actually taken from the writings of Bruce Lee.
Right.
Yeah, and expounded upon. So it's Bruce Lee's fiction. It's not like based on his own character or anything. It's just his own fiction, right. And it's been expounded upon.
Excellent. It's on Netflix?
It's on HBO Max.
HBO Max. Oh, damn, I don't have that. Oh, well.
Yeah, you just got to use a streaming site.
Yeah, I will.
Use Movie 7 or something. Okay, now you were saying earlier that you believe everyone in the show is racist. Can you talk on that more?
Yeah, I believe everybody on the show is at the very least racist and certainly classist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to pretend like the Asians. I mean, they call the Irish people ducks.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The Irish people have a name that they use for the Asians as well. And it may be because of the economic system at play that doesn't favor any of them, that pits them against each other, because they're literally competing for, the same job opportunities.
Right.
So it's obviously from a governing perspective, the Asians are the lowest of the low, and I think that just comes from lack of understanding. Like in many cases, they don't even speak the same language in many cases. So I think that just comes from, I don't understand you, I don't know you, so you're just treated lower, just a little bit lower than we treat Irish people.
Right.
The fear, I think the Irish people are able to assert themselves a little bit more because they speak the language. They have the same strengths as the Chinese people, but what makes them stronger is they speak the language. So when they mobilize,
I would say a lot more. and the language is definitely part of it, but the skin color and how
Right.
long
Well, I
they've
don't think
been
they live
here.
any the skin color that they can blend in. Absolutely. I don't think they live much better than the Asian people, though, from what
Right,
I've
and
seen.
that's
In
evidenced in things like Gangs of New York,
right, right,
which takes place about the same time as what you're talking about.
yeah.
Right. Well, economically, I see what you mean. Any as far as any justice, certainly not. But I see
They
what you
certainly
mean.
don't have
Economic.
the enterprises that the Asians happen to have because the Asians are a little bit more communal. I mean, they're both communal. I don't want to say they're any more communal. I would say that I guess the best way I could describe the Irish interaction is nationalism.
Hmm.
With
Hmm.
the Asians, they're much more enterprising because they spend their money with themselves. They don't
Yeah.
have any choice, but they certainly spend their money with themselves. But they're pretty. We're unlike the Irish. The Asians are pretty cruel to each other.
Mm.
Yeah, that's history going back millennia, though.
But I see what you mean as far as the enterprise. Um, they seem to have their ish together
Yes,
as far as like business and stuff like that.
right, right. They can certainly make money within themselves. That I think the hurdle they face is that it becomes like circular, right? Because it's money unless they're importing opium from China, which actually was probably pretty smart because now
Hmm.
you're bringing dollars in from outside of Chinatown.
Right.
Other than that, the money stays centralized. So it's
Right.
like no one's going into Chinatown to spend money unless they're going to the brothel.
Right. Which they definitely make a lot of money there. What about? I mean, they're not exporting any kind of goods at all between clothing, food, or anything.
Oh
It's all
yeah,
pretty.
well, when you have an
No,
economy that's
they're
close.
exporting.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, going
I'm
Raul.
sorry. No, but I was going to say it's the same thing like Wall Street. Black Wall Street succeeded because locked out of typical actors. And the reason I it succeeded is because you had the money going into your own community, and you see it on Black Wall Street, history of Black Wall Street, and like you had doctors and dentists and everything that you would need in a society propagated by its own people, and that's why they probably despised it. It's because they found a way to get back at the society that is the overall culture, and the majority always hates the minority getting one ups on them.
For sure. Do you
Yeah, that's
think
a good point. Now, in the
you?
case with this particular Chinatown, I think that it where you're describing a productive situation, Raul, I think this was ultimately non-productive because while everyone had businesses,
Mhm.
the criminal elements, like there was no rich Chinese person that wasn't a criminal,
Right.
right? Everyone else, yeah, they're shops, your everyday people, but just to answer or speak to Mike's question, I think they did export. By the way,
Okay.
the one guy certainly did a lot of shipping back and forth to China.
Yeah, and you saw there were characters on the cusp of figuring out their wealth. I think one, I don't know if it was Myling, but one character is figuring out how to. Um,
Take her
she
her
like
dirty
owns a bunch
money
of.
and make it
She
legal.
oh okay. She owns a bunch of land, right? Like
Yeah,
200 hectares of land, and she's gonna figure out how to like put it in someone's name that she trusts
right.
or
And
whatever.
mind you, she got that loot off. Obviously, she runs a brothel.
Right. I
Right,
see.
there
Yeah.
needs to be an engine for the rest of the enterprise to work.
Right,
Yeah, for
right.
upward mobility for the non
For the non-majority, yes.
criminal
And then you
class.
see some things that you see like in the modern day in like lower income communities, right? With the Irish people, right? Like any of the Irish people that become successful no longer even really associate with the Irish people,
Hmm.
right? Like they go live, in the mansions or they become politicians or they're
Yeah,
definitely not living in the little, Irish hood in the show.
Yeah, they become politicians and forget about everyone else, right? That's like the lead character who's kind of like a bully and who's doing
But
domestic terrorism.
he's very
He,
passionate about his people.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, he's a domestic terrorist. I mean, he's very passionate, and he blows shit up because he believes in what he's doing.
Well, I
For
think they're
sure,
all
for
doing it.
sure.
I think both. I think I would say the same for the Asians as well.
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm talking about a specific character. I mean,
No, no,
not
no. I think that we can say this, like June certainly contributes. So does Mylene to domestic terrorism.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm just talking about this specific. Like, we don't have to like juxtapose what this character does with someone else. Like
Oh
he
no, but
does.
I just am choosing to because it's the perspective that I have of the show. Like I
Yeah,
think both cultures have some very negative aspects based upon the society that they're forced to live in.
yeah, and uh, I heard who's the woman who runs the brothel?
Mylene.
Mylene. Yeah, she says so much when she's like practically on her deathbed
Oh yeah, yeah,
before she
yeah.
gets
She
better.
does.
She basically says we're all doing horrible things, for sure. And just at that point, those women need to stick together because the Irish are coming for them, trying to like
Yeah, it was a pretty great scene.
indiscriminately
She's like,
kill everyone.
are we going to be friends tomorrow? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And the answer is like clearly no. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Tomorrow it's right back to I'm going to try and kill you. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
No,
mean
yeah,
the
he is
difference.
though a bully. I don't know that he's a bully. I do think he's a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, I mean the difference is this guy is blowing shit up and doing what he's doing for a certain effect. For sure. Like beyond. You know, I mean, I guess there's a different name for what the gangs do, right? They certainly do their stuff that's negative. I mean, usually it's like drug or money related, or
Or human
maybe
trafficking.
oh, human trafficking. Okay, or enforcement related. Um, Now, was that a specific gang that was involved in human trafficking, or was it all of
Well,
them, or what?
the main character was pretty much sold to the Hop Way.
Hmm. Assam.
Yeah, he was pretty much sold to him,
Yeah.
and he says as much. To you know what I mean?
Right.
He,
So
he,
is that a certain gang that was like involved with that, or is the assumption that all the gangs are involved in human trafficking?
well, the ones that were trafficking the Chinese girls, Mylene was buying them. Remember, she purchased girls.
No, no, no. The question I'm asking you is, were all of the gangs involved in this, or was it specific
Well,
gangs that were?
certainly the main gang was the Hop Way, not the main gang, but the gang that the show follows. The Hop Way
Okay, so
certainly
we're not
were.
sure. We're not sure if it's all the gangs or if
Well,
it's just some of them.
we know Mylene was purchasing people.
Hmm.
She purchased women.
Hmm.
Well,
And Mylene's
we had
halfway.
that's
Mylene's
unusual, guys.
she's allied with the Hop Way.
Hmm.
That's not unusual, guys. We have records of freed slave purchasing slaves.
Hmm.
Also, some of the wealthy Southern families in the black community have the dark past.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if there is a hierarchy in the show of like who's who, right? Because like there are some things in the show that are kind of like, ish when we talk about like if you're in the street and you're going against another street person or another gang, that's kind of like all is fair, right? If you're not a
Hmm.
civilian, whatever happens to you, you know that you're in the street, you know that it's fair game.
Hmm.
That's one thing. But like we're talking about trafficking, now we're talking about civilians who are not in the game who are being hurt. So I'm just
Hmm.
trying to figure out if there's like a hierarchy of like immorality as far as the gangs, if they're just all involved in all sorts of manner of like drugs, human trafficking, and violence, or if there are some who are like, no, we would never do this, or we would never
So
do
they're
that.
all
Because
they're all involved in drugs and violence for sure. The
okay,
Hop Way, which is the gang that Assam is a part of, he was sold to that gang.
hmm
So at the very least, the Hop Way will buy people.
right,
At the very least, they bought one person.
hmm
Mai Ling, who is not in a gang, but is a criminal enterprise unto herself, certainly strong alliance to the Hop Way. So I don't know that I would call her a gang. I mean, you know her activities in secret, like
yeah.
she's a superhero
Okay,
in
so we're
secret.
not. Okay, so we're not. Okay, so we're not sure that that the gangs, that this is one of their main things that they do. This could be like a
No,
separate. This could be separate from the
it
gangs.
well for Mai Ling, it's one of her main things.
Yeah.
She also liberates. It's interesting because it's like I think there's like some hypocrisy there, right? Because she liberates a bunch of girls from white human traffickers, but she doesn't liberate the girls from the guy who's selling them to her.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, by then everything is. By then they're kind of at war. I mean, that's a good observation, but I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if she was heading in that direction because everything went to shit when everything went to war, right? Because we saw a progression from her. I mean, you're calling it hypocrisy, but in the beginning, she wasn't liberating anyone. She was just a part of the enterprise. And after speaking to this white woman who was involved in liberating, Chinese women who were victims of you know, um, who were involved in slavery and human trafficking, she starts thinking about her own life and what she's doing and what she's involved in, and I think she gets a guilty conscience and starts saying, "Let me start funneling some of these people out to this woman at least," and then goes back and says, "Oh, there's that horrible situation over there that I know of. You don't know how to fix it. I know how to fix it. I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to go over there and slaughter the men who are running this place, but I'm going to do what I have to do to free them." Um, so at that point, I don't know if it's a hypocrisy or if we just never got there because everything
Well,
went
no,
to.
see, I think that's an interpretation. I think you reverse the order of some things, but I think it's certainly a hypocrisy. I think she has two goals, right? She wants to get out of the life and achieve her own ends. But it opens up the series, and this is why I think there's hypocrisy. Well, first of all, it's in reverse order because she liberates them and then she kills those people and then she takes them to the girl. But she doesn't give up being and I don't know that she is intends to. I mean, I think her goal was always to get out of running a brothel and being a wealthy landowner. However,
Yeah.
the reason why I think there's hypocrisy is because I juxtaposed it with she killed the white slave traders, but not the Asian ones. And the reason why I juxtaposed it with that is because she has always acted against people who have done dirt to Asian people. Like that's her
Okay.
thing, right? Like she becomes a superhero at night and goes and you understand what I'm saying? Acts
Right.
against if you do dirt to Asian people, I'm coming to get you. And that's why I used hypocrisy because the entire time she was doing that, she was buying girls.
Oh, okay. So I missed the part where she's been doing this the whole time, not just when she started helping the white woman free
Oh
these.
no, yeah, the entire time. Remember at the beginning of the series, one got almost beheaded. Remember the other plot line that was underlying is they're looking for this
They're looking
murderer
for
with a
this.
sword,
Yes. Okay.
and
See,
that was
that's
her.
interesting. Okay. That's interesting because I don't know if you noticed, but I wasn't as
Well, there was
into
a
the
big
show.
gap from season 1 to season 2 for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big gap there, and also I wasn't always paying attention when I was
Mm.
watching the first the first few episodes even of the second season, I think. So yeah,
Yeah, she's been like a superhero the whole time, right? For
I get it.
Chinese people.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's why she tries to tell Assam that he can be like some kind of superhero, right?
Right, right. Because she recognizes he can fight. He got skill.
I see. That's interesting.
Like the first time they meet, she tells him she can help him, and he's like, I don't need any help.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's what she's alluding to.
She recognizes that he can do more. That's interesting. Um so and you know what? So does the Latinx woman that ends up dying, except she
Hmm.
had her own thing going on.
Yeah,
She wanted, I guess, well, not just revenge, but she wanted to liberate, her people from the bad white men who had like slaughtered her family and who
right.
like
And took her
owned
land.
things and yeah, and had taken land from her people. So I think she saw Assam as a come up as well, right? That whole like warming up to Assam and all of that, and like knowing, kind of alluding to like she could help him on some kind of mission he was on. That was she kind of was like plotting the whole time.
Right.